Hi everyone. Before we start the exotic armor tier list update for Season 10, I have a quick announcement. It's been a long time since I've had merch, and I've only had one piece of merch ever. Today that changes. Today is my first merch drop in many years. In fact, it's live literally right now. This is the front of the hoodie. This is the back of it. This is the front of the long sleeve, also with 2402 on the sleeve. This is the back of the long sleeve. This is one of the t-shirts. And this is the other t-shirt. You can find this new merch over at metathreads.com/Datto or just search their collections page. This merch is an unlimited quantity, but it is a limited time. It starts right now, and orders will be taken for the next 2 weeks, until March 22nd at around midnight Pacific time. Production will start shortly after, with merch being delivered sometime in mid to early April. If you have any feedback on the merch, please let me know. I would like to have 2 more merch drops during the year, so if you don't want anything right now, stay tuned for the summer and late fall for potentially more. Thanks everyone. Here's the video. Hello everyone. Welcome to the pre-season 10 exotic armor tier list update. Yeah, it's a long title. I just updated the tier list for every class, but there are a large number of changes coming in season 10 that Bungie just announced that I would like to address. After about a month or so into the season, if I need to adjust any of the scores based on this pre-season adjustment, I will do that. Let's start with Titan. Titans, I'm sorry, but our time has come. One-Eyed Mask is yet again getting hit with the nerf bat, and it seems like this nerf will be one of the final blows. The target marking has been replaced with target highlighting. I assume similar to what you might see on a particular scope or on something like Eye of Another World, which will no longer give wall hacks. The damage bonus from killing a target has also been completely removed, but the overshield on kill has been restored, but the overshield only lasts for 6 seconds, down from 8. With the wall hacks gone, this exotic is dropping some percentage points in the PvP department and very slightly in PvE due to the loss of the damage boost. It was previously at a 5 out of 5 in PvP. It's definitely coming down. I'm going to put it at about a 4 for now because of the overshield and health regen still being able to proc on any kill. But I can see this going down even more after the season starts, maybe by a little bit. Even with this nerf, it is still a very safe option, and Titans lack safe exotics. I expect Crest of Alpha Lupi to potentially take OEM's place, especially in trials for safety purposes, if One-Eyed Mask does indeed fall down that hard. Doomfang Pauldrons are getting a nerf because they are technically getting fixed. They sometimes gave super energy from melee kills while in your super. Now it will not do that, meaning you won't be able to keep yourself in your super for insane amounts of time. Totally fair on this one, very understandable. They're fixing a bug. Doomfang will still be a top tier option though. In PvE, I think it moves down maybe a fraction of a point if you wanted to do that. Same for PvP. These are still really strong, they're just working as intended now. Ashen Wake is getting a buff. Would you look at that? Fusion grenade kills while wearing Ashen Wake now refunds grenade energy based on the tier of the enemy killed. Finally! I think by default this gets a slight bump up in PvE, less of a bump in PvP if we even want to move it, but it ultimately depends on how much energy is restored per tiered enemy. You're probably going to want to utilize bottom or mid tree Sunbreaker with this to take advantage. Bottom tree is going to give you more grenade energy, while middle tree would let you hit harder with a grenade if you have Roaring Flames active. Severance Enclosure is getting buffed to allow powered melees in PvE to create the explosion effect in addition to finishers, with the explosion getting bigger and dealing more damage depending on the enemy killed. This gets a bump up a little bit in PvE for sure. PvP is no change. This would allow you to take on higher threat targets, which would then generate a bomb to kill all targets around you. A 1-2 punch shotgun can make the final blow a bit more reliable, along with any tree that gets you melee energy back to keep those explosions rolling, like Top Tree Sentinel. I would say Striker Shoulder Charge, but you'll probably just kill everything around you anyway with the Shoulder Charge. Antaeus Wards no longer allows chip damage through. That's great and all, but that doesn't change the function of the exotic in any way, so this is going to stay where it is. Dune Marchers static charge chain lightning radius was increased to 20 meters, up from 12. Holy crap. That is significant. Expect to see this a little bit more in PvP, especially with the OEM nerfs, although it's tough to guarantee kills with the chain lightning effect. You'll just be able to tag people from much farther away, but that can give you an advantage in a gunfight in 2v1 or potentially even 3v1 situations. PvE, yeah, it's nice, but I don't think this really moves score-wise. Mark 44 Standicides will now have the overshield generate in half of a second, down from 1.25 seconds. Pretty nice buff there to get the overshield up really quick. Gonna see a slight, maybe slight bump in score in PvP. The main appeal of the exotic to me is still the energy gains though, and the energy gains are not changing. Warlocks, let's move on to you. Apotheosis Veil is now guaranteed to drop with 16 intellect. That's not really a buff to the exotic or anything, but it's a nice quality of life change. No score adjustment. Verity's Brow is getting some changes. The buff now boosts your grenade damage by 10% per stack. The buff to your team's grenades recharge rate now kicks in when you throw your grenade, and you'll now get a text notification saying how many people you're buffing with this exotic. I like the grenade damage buff. I think Verity's Brow is actually pretty good as an exotic, so this just boosts it for yourself a bit. However, if I'm reading this correctly, buffing your teammates requires you to throw a grenade first instead of it just passively starting when you get kills. You're not going to have a problem with throwing a grenade, you'll just need to remember to keep up the buff. For solo play, obviously this gets a bump up. For group play, need to see how the teammate buffing situation plays out first. We have an honorary mention to Crown of Tempests. We know that Top Tree Stormcaller is getting nerfed in some way, which means Crown of Tempests might take an indirect hit, although it's still going to be viable in basically all of the trees. Controverse Hold's damage reduction is getting nerfed. It used to be 40%, now it is 20%. This will make it so you have a bit more of a chance fighting against Warlock's tactically charging handheld Supernova. This is mainly for shotguns and fusions. This is definitely going to knock it down a bit in PvP, although PvE pretty much unchanged. Ophidian Aspects now increases the melee range of all Warlock melees regardless if they are charged or not. This is quite a nice buff for these, a straight up buff, especially on top of the global Warlock melee range buff that is coming in Season 10. If we want to argue for a slight bump in PvP, I'm absolutely willing to hear that. I think I'm still going to end up using something like Transversive Steps as I'm not an aggressive player, and I think this buff doesn't do enough to push people into a completely different playstyle or anything like that. Finally, a Sanguine Alchemy is getting completely redesigned. It will now pause the timer of any rift that the wearer is standing in by getting weapon kills, extending the rift's duration. Wow, that is quite the perk. Now, I'm not surprised that Bungie is starting to move away from wall hacks. Hunters are the only ones with it remaining, although I expect them to hang onto it, at least on Middle Tree Night Stalker, especially after it got nerfed really, really badly. Foe Tracer does not seem to be enough of a pain point just yet for Bungie to really do anything with that. If Sanguine Alchemy works with Well of Radiance, then we're in for quite a ride in PvE. And even if it doesn't, it seems like it's still going to be really strong. I don't think Bungie would allow this to work with Well of Radiance, since Well of Radiance is so long already. PvP-wise, I don't see this exotic doing a ton, but it really depends on how long you pause the timer on the rift per kill, what are the diminishing returns. We still need a lot of information. But solely based on that description, even healing or empowered rifts, it's still really, really good. I'll put it up there with Nezarec Sin and Sun Braces for now. I'm going to be bold on this one, but I fear that I might not even be bold enough. This could go even higher than that. Hunters, you guys are up. Assassin's Cowl is getting the Severance Enclosure treatment, allowing powered melees to also work in addition to finishers in PvE. The invis duration now scales depending on the tier of the enemy killed. We do have a nerf though. Arc Staff kills no longer activate this. PvP is going to take a pretty big hit since Arc Staff kills regenerating your health was a big factor in its appeal. For PvE, if we wanted to give this the slightest buff, we could, but even with this buff, I'm not sure if I'm really moving it anywhere just yet. Khepri Sting now boosts smoke bomb damage. They now deal 150% damage when wearing the exotic. Not a bad boost at all, although that does encourage actually using it on other people instead of yourself for a quick vision boost. Flat buff to this exotic, maybe knock it up a couple of percentage points, maybe. Young Ahamkara's spine got buffed, 14% increased explosion radius on trip mines. Again, another flat buff, does little to nothing for PvE, but makes it tougher to get out of the way in PvP. Not sure I would really move it anywhere on the list though, but now that trip mines can stick on people again, I guess we could like bump it up a smidge. Frosty's got changed in that the ability regen no longer stacks multiplicatively with other class ability energy generating perks. This means fewer dodges under the same conditions as before. Need to see how big of a nerf this is. This could just be, you know, maybe a couple seconds extra under dodge. But for now, I think I'm going to keep it where it is. Maybe we can knock it down a quarter of a point. Finally, a pretty big nerf. Orpheus Rig. The maximum amount of super energy you can regain from this exotic with a single use of Shadow Shot is now 50%. While Orpheus Rig was affected by the global super energy nerfs back in Shadowkeep, it just sort of kept triggering super energy bonuses anyway, to the point where it felt like it wasn't even nerfed at all. Bungie seems to be putting a stop to that by hard capping the energy at 50%. I don't think this exotic is necessarily dead for general play. It's still a free 50% super energy boost if you use your tether in a smart way. It might just not feel as required as it does now due to how good it is. This will also affect some low man raid challenges that revolve around tether spam, which affects a tiny portion of the top percentage of players playing the game right now. It'll get knocked down a little bit in PvE, but I still think it's one of the better options in the game, and I don't think you would be dumb to continue to use this exotic at all. As I mentioned earlier, I'll keep tabs on these exotics in the month of March, and if I need to update this again after the month is over, then I will do that. If you're wondering where my Season of the Worthy trailer video is, well, I thought Bungie was going to drop some info about the Seraph Tower and Seraph Bunker activities in their most recent update. I was wrong! I did have some first impressions on the story content that we'll be experiencing, but at this point, I'm just going to save it for my first impressions video that will be out sometime in the next couple of weeks. Thanks for watching. Please buy my merch. I'll see you next time.